Hello, Assalamualaikum. Hello, welcome to CPD Unlimited 2.0 Session 3, brought to you by International Affairs Committee and CPD Committee. My name is Architect Qhawarizmi Norhisham, and I am your moderator today. Today's paper titled A Sole Proprietary Architect's Experience Overseas by Datuk Architect Haji Saiful Anuar Abdul Aziz from Anuar Aziz Architect and Art Axis Design Group. I personally curious and eager to learn all his experience venturing and practicing abroad. And he has mitigated the challenges of having projects in Cambodia, China, and Myanmar, to name a few. And I hope we can learn how we can export our services. But before we get to the sharing session, I humbly invite Tan Sri Architect Esa Muhammad, the Chairman of International Affairs Committee, to deliver his welcome remarks. Tan Sri?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Bahagia Architect Datuk Haji Saiful Anwar for making time this afternoon. He has a vast experience overseas, locally, over 30 years, and I'm pleased to have you with us this afternoon to share your experience and what you have done. And also, not to forget to thank you, Architect Qhawarizmi, for moderating this afternoon session. See, Malaysia is an international trading nation, and to a large extent, we are quite liberal in dealing with international trade. And our total trade as of last year, something like 1.77 trillion ringgit is huge. So we have no choice but actually to look abroad. We are also the signatory of the World Trade Organization, and also we are signatory to the General Agreement on Trade and Services. And we have been urged to liberalize in our trade and open our markets. So that posed a lot of competition. In 1977, we had an Asian financial crisis, and we embarked on a very conscious effort and strategies to promote the services sector as a new engine of growth. And the professionals then, I remember, architects and engineers in the year 2000, we suggested to the government to see how we could actually promote the export of professional services, because one forgets that the professionals are actually the people behind the nation's development. So we established the National Professional Services Export Council, which was approved by Cabinet then in the year 2000. For LAM, for Lembaga Architect Malaysia, and PAM, we have the International Affairs Committee, where I chaired both. So I'm the chairman for both committees, and was formed to look at ways and means how we could promote our international activities, not just about export, but also getting involved in other international bodies like yourself, Azimi. You're also involved in the Acacia Young Architects Group, right?
Yes,
So,
correct.
so this is one way for us to make ourselves known and establish our presence internationally. Within ASEAN itself, we have entered into a framework agreement on services, and we have the ASEAN Architect Register, and also the APEC Architect, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. We have also APEC Architect Registration platform. As of, if I can recall, November 2020, last year, we have something like 49, or maybe now about 50 ASEAN architects registered in Malaysia under LAM. And also we have something like, I think about 35 APEC architects. As compared to Singapore, who is actually very competitive, they have, let me see, 123 ASEAN architects, and Indonesia 165, Philippines 123 ASEAN architects, and so these are our competitors. And of course, I'm glad today that we are joined by Lembaga Architect Datuk Saiful to tell us and maybe provide some insights and motivation for others to follow suit, because we have to remember that we have seen so many foreign architects working in Malaysia, particularly on a lot of mega projects. And I feel that it would be ideal for Malaysians to excel, not only locally, but also internationally. So today I'm pleased also to congratulate PAM CPD committee for organizing this marathon CPD program and session. And I wish you all the very best and fruitful outcome of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Datuk. And thank you, Tan Sri. I will take that sentiment as a challenge for young architects to be ahead of other competitors around the region. And I think for the participants, bear in mind that if you have any question, you can click on the Q&A bubble. It is beside the polls bubble. If you look at the Zoom footer, you can see that it's a Q&A bubble and you can post your question there. But due to time constraint, we will select a few questions only for the speakers, as we have to end 3:30 sharp. So the speaker today is Datuk Architect Haji Saiful Anuar Abdul Aziz. Is an architect, urban planner, healthcare designer with experience spanning over 30 years. His flair of design is refined under the tutelage of Professor Christine Hawley and guest tutor Sir Peter Cook at Polytechnic of East London, now known as University of East London, and also have the opportunity to have his work reviewed by Wolf de Prix from Koch Mimoblau and also Neil Dennery in London. He incorporated Anuar Aziz Architect in 2000 and subsequently formed Art Exist Design Group into an award-winning boutique architect, lead a multidisciplinary design practice with a tagline, local expertise, worldwide aspiration. I think it's befitting that we have him today, and we are looking forward to learn his lesson, preparing out for practice to go overseas. Without further ado, we welcome Datuk Architect Haji Anwar Aziz, Saiful Anwar Abdul Aziz to present his paper today. Datuk, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and I would have to say the opening remarks by Tan Sri Datuk Sri Isa is something that we all are looking forward to, and basically as you are basically our inspiration also in order to go overseas and opening up our horizons. So basically, I'll continue with the session. Basically, the topic is a sole proprietary architect's experience overseas. It might be a different experience, basically because of the size, the nature of the firm that we are in. But let's start with the beginning. The story behind how the projects to come to us. We are basically based in PJ. The office has been in operation since the year 2000. And over the span of a few years, we are lucky in a way to get the opportunity to actually move into a few countries within the ASEAN region. The first one that we were having an opportunity to is to go into Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And the second one is in Qingdao, China. And the third one, which is basically currently in ongoing project, is in Moulmein in Myanmar. And unfortunately, with Moulmein, I think we all know what's happening in Myanmar at the moment, but we will talk about that later on. Yeah. And basically, how the project do come to us for the first one in Cambodia, is basically one of the most common way of foreign architects going into a country, basically by invitation and invited to be in a competition. For this one, we were invited by the Ministry of Land Management, Urban Planning and Construction Cambodia on behalf of Soka Group, which is the developer and as well as landowner. And this is something that behind the scene, basically, we were trying to get, the first stage that we did was basically before going in to find out about how and what is the project that is happening in the country. And we were lucky to be able to get information about this particular project. So on the invitation, 13 companies were actually invited, half international architects basically coming in from Europe, for example, UK, France, Northern Asian countries like Japan and Korea. And from Southeast Asia, basically we were the sole architect company called from Malaysia and another one from Singapore, and the rest are basically local Cambodians. So that site visit and briefing was done in October 2015 in Phnom Penh. Like I said, this is practically the usual way of actually entering a new country. The second one in Qingdao, China, this is an interesting process because basically we were introduced to the project by a local Malaysian contractor. So we don't basically, in terms of connection, it can come from anywhere. Yeah. So for this particular project, Emery in Qingdao, China, it was basically through personal recommendation for an interior project. Emery at that time was just established in October 2016 and is a fast-growing direct selling company. Qingdao was their first headquarters, and now there is another one in KL. Their market presence is in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Philippines, and also in Africa. So basically, in doing this project, the way of us entering China was basically through the local contractor from Malaysia. And the third one, which is basically ongoing at the moment, is for Myanmar Offshore Supply Base, MOSB, which is basically MOSB is a Singapore company. Basically, they received green light from Myanmar Investment Commission to construct an oil and gas supply base in Mon State, Myanmar. It was published in Myanmar Times, and they are the first foreign-run oil and gas supply base in Myanmar. And this project actually was brewing for quite a few years. And again, this is also through personal contact from a personal friend that we know for many, many years and someone we highly respected. So in a way, the project that we managed to get in touch with are basically slightly different from what we term as the government-led missions overseas, but by no means lesser, I would assume, in terms of strength and also the size of the project. So this is a project which is basically currently ongoing in Myanmar. Yeah. So the first site visit was done in 2019, and unfortunately we have a fairly long inactivity happening last year, and unfortunately also there is a bit of a coup happening in Myanmar. So that is another story altogether. So when we go into the brief, so for all of these projects, the thing that we have to be prepared when we are going overseas are basically, we are not in a way in our own comfort zone. For every single project that we're doing overseas, the project comes with its own unique problems. So for the first one, the Apsaras in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, it was at that time there is an economic boom in Cambodia, and this particular project is just in a way another one of the big project driven by local developer. And in this case, it is basically termed as a mega multi-use development at Troy Chong Va Riverside shopping complex. It's on an island, which I will explain a little bit later on. The reason why the ministry is involved because the project is deemed as national interest. So all the designs and basically the deliverables are basically controlled by the ministry. And like I said just now, the main components are basically shopping malls, service apartments, hotel, and corporate office. But the subtext of the project, which is also very interesting, when we were doing this project, there were also a desire by the ministry that we should be looking into improvements, for example, viable solution to their water woes, sanitary systems. Basically, they're looking at this project as being the pilot project in order to improve infrastructure in Phnom Penh, and later on, if it's actually successful, it will be utilized and used everywhere else in Cambodia. The other thing that we're looking at is also flood mitigation, green response, flood mitigation, because basically once a year, this area would be flooded. The issues here and the issues in Myanmar projects are almost similar. And at the end of the day, they're looking at what we term as keeping up with the Joneses, because basically this is the time when they're actually looking into improvement to be amongst the developing, highly developing nations within ASEAN. Going into China, this particular project is because it's basically CNI moving into China. The approach is very different. This is more in terms of interior project. And the first HQ in Qingdao is basically to consolidate all the operations into one building. Now, this is interesting in a way that all the works are basically done in Malaysia, and works are basically being done in remote. Basically, we are dealing with a lot of technology in terms of communications, in terms of getting things done, and this is where we see in a slightly developed nation like China, things can move very fast with bigger and better experience. So this project is big in terms of size. It's about 19,000 square feet to fit in 100 personnel and various sales rep. And because the nature of project is basically the nature of operation is similar to CNI. So in that sense, the local representative over here are able to make use of that in terms of reference. The next one, going back into Myanmar, in terms of the brief, the project is again completely different in terms of nature, although basically at the end of the day the components are perhaps, I would say, recognizable, but the brief that comes with this is very challenging. The idea is basically to create an offshore heaven, if you like, for people who has been staying in oil rigs for 30 days to go into this area and off to another place. If anyone familiar with oil and gas operations, the personnel that goes into oil rigs are basically having a maximum time of about 30 days. The reason being the condition of living psychologically and also physically, human are not able to move beyond this kind of like time frame. So what they do is after 4 weeks offshore, they will stay in this resort, if you like, for 3 days to recuperate, to retune their body physiology and also psychologically before they move out of the country for 2 weeks. And after that, they come in again, and the process proceed that way. So this offshore supply-based community village become something like a test. I would say like a test case where they should be able to heal in a way, to get back into their rhythms before going to their families, and also to psychic themselves before going back into 1 month of staying in the oil rig. So the brief is there to start with, and basically there is also a multiplicity of issues that we need to tackle. For example, in terms of internationalism, there are a lot of different oil companies operating in Myanmar, either Petronas or from or Thailand, or even Shell, and also PT Power. Yeah, PT Power is from Thailand, and also Shell, and also Esso from Europe. So this place is also required to deal with all these various facets of human needs. So as the story goes, we go into just a little bit more in terms of context, because I think in this particular point, there might be some similarity of how we look at projects in Malaysia, but also there are some unique references when we go into countries like Cambodia. So for this particular project on a 21-acre site next to Soka Phnom Penh Hotel Residence, is on an island which is basically having 2 rivers met at one point, Mekong River on one side and Tonle Sap River on the other. And during monsoon season, Tonle Sap River would flood, and the flood would go all the way towards Phnom Penh. And one of the main issue here is basically how to mitigate problems in terms of flood within this particular area. So the other thing that we always look at when we go into different countries are basically even with our own projects in Malaysia, we always look at local references. So for this, the Apsaras is the name that we coined for our proposal. There were other proposals done by different countries, but I would also say, amazingly, the local Cambodians, when they submitted their proposals, I think we the Malaysians, the Singaporeans, or even the Japanese were more in tune in a way of looking at references into culture, which is basically what is required in the brief, rather than local architects in Cambodia. So in this case, it's just a quick series of references that we use. The Apsaras dancers, which is basically in a long time ago, Khmer culture was the greatest culture in Indochina, and it greatly influenced Thailand and also Bali, and in a way Myanmar to a certain extent. So Khmer people are very proud people, and they are very into conserving and also enhancing their culture as time goes on. So this is the reference that we take in terms of coming up with a image, and the image thus done as a series of dancing girls with prima donna becoming the main buildings. And it's basically taking a lot of references from Sampot pattern, for example, which is their type of songket, if you like. Water treatment. Water is also a very important element in nations around Cambodia, Thailand, and Myanmar, and staggered building form to create interest. So basically, the silhouette that we are doing is reminding the nation. Basically, this is the view towards the building will come from Phnom Penh proper, which is basically where most people would stay, and you'll be looking at a new building, which is in a way a reference back to their own culture. So so this is basically apart from that, the I would say their brief was incredible, and I personally think during that time it was highly ambitious, because basically to come up with this proposal, we are also looking at a massive investment from their side, not only in terms of building works, but also in terms of improvement of infrastructure. But in the way of compiling and basically getting into the compliance to the requirement, we follow up with the designs based on salutogenic designs, and also in terms of technological advances, whichever that we can bring in terms of knowledge from Malaysia to Cambodia. After looking at Cambodia, the CNI Emery project is much more straightforward. It's a purely interior project that basically we are dealing with the culture of direct selling. So and in this way, we try to absorb the kind of outlook that they are looking at in terms of how to in a way motivate mainland Chinese to join Emery, and also to be able to do the things that they're supposed to be doing, which is basically multi-level marketing. So the image is very much more, I would say, pop art in a way, but that is something which is very relevant at that time when we are doing this project in China. So the colors are Feng Shui based. There are also different elements which is basically being used in order to portray movements and also technology, and a repetitive of kind of like decorative element derived from the logo. And this is the kind of thing that pull all the designs together. And interestingly, what we did then was basically to specify everything in Malaysia, and this project is done in record time. From the initial stage of designing up to completion is only 4 months, and this is one of the things that smaller company perhaps can do, which is basically to do things in Malaysia and find a good collaboration with a local contractor overseas. And that's what we have done, is basically to prepare all the documents, everything done in English, send it over to China. Within a few days, we were told to come over and look at the drawings and specification, which is completely translated into Chinese by the developer and by the contractor. And we were asked to check whether it is correct. So we were lucky that our project director is Chinese and he can read and write Chinese. So in that sense, what he was saying was technically everything was translated perfectly. So whatever material that we have specified in Malaysia, they managed to get exact replica or equivalent in China. And from the initial drawing, the perspective to the finished product is basically very much similar. So moving into Myanmar, going again into this area. So this is basically the whole area which we are looking at. The whole project is about 500 acres. Most of it are basically taken over by the offshore oil and gas supply base. Basically, it's a very technical project. It's almost like Kamaman, and it was at this particular moment is handled by Subana Jurong. So they are looking into the port portion, the oil and gas components, the containers and everything else. And we on the other side is looking at the pretty stuff. Basically, we're looking at 50 acres of, it's almost like a healing haven for everybody, not only for people coming in from the offshore, from the oil rig, but it's also for the usage of people working within the Myanmar offshore supply base, as well as the people beyond. So this project basically, the involvement on our side is fairly hefty in a way, because we are tasked in looking at not only the physical buildings, which is basically to house very tired and probably very grumpy people coming from the oil rigs, but we are also having to create an environment almost like a sanctuary for people to hide, to heal, and we are tasked to source for the kind of materials, the kind of trees, the kind of equipments that goes into this, up to the point of what would be the best possible way for MOSP to create a link with the surrounding area. The surrounding area here, unlike the project in Phnom Penh, this area near to Molmen is very, very rural. And if in Cambodia, we have to deal with intermittent floods whenever Tonle Sap Lake is submerged. In this particular area, we're looking at about 4 months of submerged per year. So we were working with Subana Jurong and trying to find out how to basically make this project sustainable, bearing in mind that we are having these issues of flooding happening 3 to 4 months per year, and it's happening around this area and also near the Yangon areas as well. So it's a typical story of projects. I think whoever have dealt with projects in Myanmar would probably know the issue. So in terms of projects, a very quick take, the layout that we have done is basically to comprising of areas where people stay, where we have interaction between local people and also the base. For example, creating fruit orchards that local can actually grow and the owner or the tenants can actually use. Shops basically either to cater for a normal Western or I would say the more developed nations taste in terms of food and recreation. It would also cater for local public in terms of fast kind of like shops and also medical equipment. So those are basically the CSR portion that also needs to be catered for. So I think for this particular project, we've been working on it for I would say solidly for a year, and the design has been revised again due to the pandemic. And I think probably by the time we actually start looking into the actual construction on site, we might even have to go another round of changes due to the current situation. Yeah. So this is the basic feel of it. It's going to be done in stages. It's for a population for about 10,000 people, transient population. So basically, here the showcase is basically looking into a traffic-free environment within the 50 acres. So all vehicle coming into this area will have to be parked outside the area. It will be a very green zone. The movement is basically through electrical buggies, and in terms of operation, we came with a proposal that everything will come through a centralized kitchen and also operation where everything else, for example, food, the F&B, the maintenance of hotels and service apartments will come from remote points. And so we have this idea about calling a building system Asia system, where even in this particular project, we are looking at a separation of in terms of different components that can be plugged in and out of a building as we do it, because basically at the end of the day we are looking at maintenance being done by locals. We're looking at kind of like products coming in from either from Thailand or Malaysia would be too far away. And this particular office complex was in a way a reference, a throwaway to the condition in that particular area during the 4 months of flooding. So what you see basically water with this is the toddy coconut tree, yeah? Popping up from the flood water is a very common view, but this is this particular office complex for the oil operators are basically done as a reference to what is probably they used to for some month of the year. And it's also sometimes we were looking at this as being an opportunity to actually create something which in normal circumstances might be difficult to create. For example, in Malaysia, there will be building regulations, bylaws, and also fire requirements that doesn't allow certain building to be built to the specific ideas that the architect wants. And also the other thing is also working in Myanmar, we also being told specifically to use local products. Basically, we are more than happy to be using all the ticks that we can. Obviously, it has to be sustainable, but it's also we were also told to find to lower down in terms of technology, because basically we need to be able to give a lot of jobs to back to the local population, the Mon State population. And Mon State is not amongst the, I would say, they're not like the rich districts in Myanmar. They are further south. They're quite near towards Thailand, southern Thailand. So basically, when we were doing all these components, we are looking at the usage of local materials, local technology. Perhaps we are working with local engineers in Myanmar, because basically another requirement that is needed is at least a working knowledge of earthquake and design that is kind of like complemented by the earthquake scenarios in Myanmar. So the next one, obviously, when we were looking at all these projects, from the simple ones in Qingdao to interesting competition in Cambodia, as well as obviously the big one in Myanmar, we are always looking at the perks, what would be coming towards our way. So for the Apsaras, we went through 2 levels of competition. The first stage was 13 companies submitted the proposal. The second stage was 4 shortlisted to 4 companies, ourselves, a Singaporean company, and then the other 2 are basically one local Cambodian and the other one, I think it was a Korean. And obviously we have not much knowledge of what was spoken, because everything is most of it is communicated in Khmer, but then we were given a certificate and an envelope, and we were looking at the envelope, and actually what it means is that we were second, and that actually denotes 40 million real. So in hard cash. So this is also something which is interesting to share, because whenever you go into different countries, in terms of payments, it can be in many ways. So this is one of the way that we were being paid. So 40 million, we were instant multi-millionaires, 40 million reals, but translated loosely into $10,000 and 40,000 ringgit at that time. So and the interesting thing is we were looking at the cash and said, how are we going to take it back? Because basically it's an E3 kind of like envelope full of cash. So we did a trial run of trying to convert some of the money in Phnom Penh. We decided to, I think at that time we decided to convert 2,000 equivalent to 2,000 US dollar, and in Cambodia, as in a lot of different countries, the way to exchange money is not through the official money changer, because that will give you a very low rate. You go through another party, and we were told, yeah, you can get the money within 20 minutes, which turned out to be 40 minutes. And we thought, okay, that's it. We're not going to change any more money in Cambodia. And suffice to say, whenever we think of going to Cambodia next time, we have a lot of cash. So that's one way of saying, looking at the perks, I would say. For Emery, the good thing about this is basically we are given opportunity to do something which is basically not able to do in Malaysia, for example, but it's also a way of exploring connectivity and how you are able to work together with a contractor without even having to meet them. So, but this basically needs a little bit more collaboration, I would say, and a lot more in terms of knowing the process, because in China, everything is, as China moving outside their countries also, everything is very much controlled by them. But we were lucky in this instance. They were looking at a product which is basically as spot on as what has been drawn. And for Myanmar offshore supply base, the process that goes with it goes quite far, basically, because again, this is in Myanmar, this is considered one of the project of national interest. We were basically requested to present the designs to the Chief Minister, to the Parliament, Mon State Parliament. So it is an honor to actually go up to the highest level. And in this particular process, we were presenting it in English, and it was simultaneously translated into Burmese. And the only thing that we know that we've done the right thing is after the end of the presentation, everybody was standing up and clapping. So we thought that was a nice way to say, yes, we approve of your design. So it is a beautiful moment. And I think for a sole proprietorship company, like us, this is a real honor, because sometimes this opportunity might not even happen in your own country. Yeah. So it is always good to be able to explore your full potential, and when you go out of the country, explore the best to basically look at your best potential, because basically you never know what then it will open up after what you have done. So of all these various, the main reason for choosing these three projects is basically there were in a way different way of handling a project, basically either remotely or doing a competition, which when unfortunately we didn't win, but if we have won, we would have open up an office, a small office in Cambodia, and working together with the local architect over there. But in Myanmar, definitely we are opening up our office, which has been delayed due to the unfortunate events for the last couple of years. So the lesson learned is basically I think it's in a way appropriate not only for smaller companies, but also for slightly larger companies, basically how to actually promote oneself, and basically at the end of the day, what the kind of thing is expected when you are overseas. So the first one is basically, I would say, is how do you promote yourself? So basically, I just wanted to show what we have done in order to introduce ourselves whenever we are going overseas, or whenever we have queries of overseas clients coming into Malaysia looking for joint venture architects. So bear with me, it's not a promotion of our company, but basically the kind of thing we have actually discussed this with the marketing in order to how to promote yourself without going into issues of over promoting. So just have a look at how we did this.
For centuries, humans have been known to create amazing structures from the simplest of resources. We have come a long way since that, but the fundamentals have always remained the same. Founded in the year 2000, Art Access Design Group brings you modern concepts and aesthetic products, which are driven by a philosophy of design excellence. From master plans to institutions to residential projects, we believe in offering creative and innovative architectural design solutions, combining great design with functionality. Portfolio of works are diverse in terms of size and complexity. We're constantly exploring and testing new ideas because styles come and go, but good design is language. Our works are recognized globally through national and international design awards and publications, a novelty amongst Malaysian architectural practice. And here at Art Access Design Group, we dedicate our lives to designing structures that leave a lasting impression.
Okay, basically the reason for this is whenever we're going overseas, there will always be competition. Firstly, usually is with the local architects that is basically working in that country, and also the plethora of different outfits that is coming in. As what Tan Sri was saying just now, there were a lot of architects. For example, in Malaysia, there were a lot of architects, foreign architects coming in with the packages that is beyond architecture. But also, whenever we're going overseas, we have to compete to do the same thing in order to compete. Yeah. So as a reference for CCBR, basically the one in Cambodia, we came second. But as what we posted in our Facebook, second is always the biggest loser because we are nearly there, but we're not quite there. And but where we did not win was not because of the design per se, but the winning project was by a Singaporean company. They came in with contractors, funders, as well as a complete consultancy that comes together. So this is where whenever I think nowadays when we are looking at projects overseas, we are looking at a complete, slightly bigger complete package so that we can actually compete. And it's also a good way to be able to show to countries, and let's face it, in a lot of countries that we go to, I think we are going to, most of it is to a less developed country. For example, we're going to Cambodia and Myanmar, and there are also penetration to countries in Africa. So a lot of these countries are looking at Malaysia and Singapore Malaysia is always come second. I think in a lot of cases, people are looking at Singapore. For example, in Cambodia and Myanmar, they're looking at Singapore guidelines, building bylaws as being their guidelines. And Malaysia comes very close to second. But what they're looking at whenever we go to these places, they're looking at, hey, what kind of system you're coming in. We know that Malaysia is doing a lot of prefabs and a lot of different products and materials and all that. We're looking forward to work with you on this kind of thing. So, so in order to move to a new countries like this, it's good to be able to get into a much bigger package than just purely single consultancy. And the other thing is also get yourself known in a way by entering competitions. For example, in a way, we love competitions. We were at World Architecture Festival twice. We presented works under FIAPSI and all that. So basically, those kind of recognition is good in order to be able to get fellow, for example, FIAPSI, for example, for the international ones, there are developers coming from different nations competing. One way they're competing amongst each other, but the other is that you are given opportunity to be able to showcase your work with the potential developers or contractors coming from various countries. So Malaysians are very good in doing designs, and I'm honestly quite proud of what we have done. We, meaning Malaysians, have done over the years. That I don't think we are second to any in terms of designs and the way of us thinking. But perhaps the approach of going overseas is something that we must look into improving. Yeah. And the takeout from the Myanmar project is that initially we were thinking of just doing the architectural portion by just getting the typical brief from the client. But towards the end, after working with them for about a year, we realized that we have gone beyond architecture in a way that we've never imagined. We're looking at psychology, we're looking at landscaping in a way which is healing, and also we need to be able to think beyond the comfort of creating just simple hotel rooms, a simple service apartments, a simple office spaces, retail spaces, but into environment that people can actually heal, and also something as a reference from Myanmar itself in order to move forward. So in this case, our client have actually been told that it could be the new way forward if this is done right meaning by the collective group that basically that works together in making this a reality, that this could be something that propel Myanmar in terms of technology and also embracing ideas from another country into their built environment in a much better way. So I think sometimes it also comes with an obligation that we must be able to show what nations can do, but also what nations must do in order to be able to one way create ourselves overseas, but on another, if there is any of the things that we can do from Malaysia, bringing it over to these countries, it is something which is, I would say, a noble thing to do. And finally, when we were there in some of these places, this is a bit funny when we talk about herd mentality, because basically the first thing when we went to Myanmar, we have no knowledge of that country. Same thing as Cambodia. So the herd mentality means we just met with fellow Malaysians overseas, and we were led to do the right thing, do things the right way, and meet the banks, the embassies. I think this is basically relevant to any I would say nationalities going overseas. So with all this being basically at the end of the day, you should be able to practice in a way which is the best, not only for you, for your client, but also the country that you present, but be able to say calmly in spaces or places that you're not accustomed to. So with that, let's bounce some ideas. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope it's something that we can ponder on, yeah? So go back to you.
Thank you, Datuk. It's a very fruitful sharing, and I think all the participants can think about it, challenges and also strategy to export our service. Maybe I would start with, some commentary that we young architects are trying to formulate a simplified or, not a total basic service. Try to compartmentalize some of the supporting architectural services such as rendering or maybe concept design. Try to broken down the legal framework of each country, because doing cross-border platform or cross-border framework is quite difficult due to the fact that each country have their own legal framework. So we in the Young Architects Committee was thinking to maybe I know that the end goal is to get the whole project commissioned, but we're trying to scale down to compartmentalize. For example, China are very big in model 3D actual modeling, scale model. Meanwhile, in Scandinavian country, most of your younger practitioners are also focusing on 3D rendering. They get customer all over the world. So we were thinking there might be sort of like a gateway to deliver that Malaysian quality for people to get accustomed to, and eventually, hopefully, the brand image, as you mentioned, could be better than Singapore. Is that a realistic way of looking at things?
I think it is basically the way of doing architecture. I would think is different from the way things are being done before. So basically, I think I'm always for areas of specialization, and basically in order to do great things in small packages, because I think that is also the best way to move forward. Because basically, whenever you export services overseas, there is a very short, I would say, learning cycle that things whether goes right or goes wrong. And I think what you're mentioning just now in terms of rendering and all that, I think there is always a great demand for that. And I think there is also a good test case in order to find out what actually good, or what is actually the in thing happening in various countries. And yeah, I absolutely agree with you that there is also a good way to move forward. But I think in my case, I would say a lot of the projects, some of the projects that I mentioned just now, basically I would say it's also depending on luck. So if any of the young architects were given an opportunity, even a small one, it's always a good way to find your space, and how to actually get it bigger after a while. Yes.
With any new venture, there is definitely the balance between risk and reward. In your particular case, how do you justify entering the competition? And I'm sure you have spent your own money traveling, working on it. So how do you make sure that you at least have a peace in mind that the risk that you are taking, could bring some, substantial reward?
Yes, that's a very good question, because I think it is relevant not only for projects or going overseas in trying to secure jobs, but it's also relevant to us entering competitions in Malaysia to secure a commissioner job. I think at the end of the day, when we were doing the projects, in our own experience, during the first stage, I would say we just do enough, because basically we were banking on interesting idea, and also the models and the 3D. This is exactly what you said just now. So we were focusing more in terms of flair of presentation. So those are done in-house that you can control. But once we go into the second stage, I think that is where we start to go all out in terms of trying to secure the job. But I think at the end of the day, for the Cambodian project, we eventually did not, I would say we just break even, but because the amount of time that we spend in order to really impress the judges much more than what we normally do in Malaysia. But for the others, I mean, in cases like Myanmar, we obviously have spent a lot in trying to in developing the designs and all that, but there are things that is beyond our control. The pandemic is a whole thing that's happening all over the world, but the coup was not something expected. So we were thinking of moving in again by the second quarter of this year, but unfortunately, it will be another setback until things are more cool. Yeah. So in terms of balance, there is no, I would say there's no right way to balance it. But I suppose at the end of the day, if you feel that it's worth the effort, it's always something worth pursuing. Yeah. But also the other thing for overseas project is most of the time is only for ideas and not based on fee proposal. So I think that is probably also the same way as a lot of architects coming into Malaysia, where the scope of work is basically controlled at only a certain portion, where for example, they will be doing the conceptual designs and up to a certain stage, and the Malaysian will take over. So I think that is also another way to cap in terms of our expenditure. So that's also a difference in terms of working on it.
Participants in the forum can post your question there in the Q&A bubble if you have any, and we will read the question for Datuk Saiful to answer. But maybe while waiting for the questions to come, do you think your domestic reputation among a local client improve by the fact that you have managed to done some of the work overseas? Does it, influence?
Okay. I think, okay, we have in a way fairly specific clients when in Malaysia. So, but I think it impresses more of the potential clients coming from overseas that they source us out and talk about experiences of how to deal with kind of like the same scenario, but it's on the opposite ends. But I would imagine all this basically very much depending on how you promote yourself. It doesn't help in terms of your portfolio by having a cache of projects overseas, kind of like experiences, and also know-how, and being able to promote yourself better in this country. Yeah.
Yes. My next question maybe is a little bit not directly on exporting our service, but I've seated down on the forum with regards to architecture competition that some of the competition, I think in Australia, include one of the requirement is to have a collaborative effort with a younger practice, 5 years and below. And the reason why developers there are so keen to have that, because they will get 1 to 2% of plot ratio increase. So, beside doing competition for getting all the design creative ideas, do you think there is a value where we can make design competition a bit more desirable or tempting, or a bit more because almost all these developers will not have to do it. It's not compulsory. They can just appoint. Do you think that there is a way that we can increase our competitiveness domestically, so we can fight our tooth and nail out there?
I think in terms of competition, I'm all for competitions also, because basically some of the best ideas do come from competitions, regardless of the way of how the judging is being done. Yeah, but I think one of the things that we found in competition in Malaysia is basically when we talk about developers, the competition normally comes into competition of fees. I think lately, this is what we have experienced lately, and it's not based on ideas. So I think that in a way is something counterproductive, because at the end of the day, depending on how hungry you are for a job, you just throw away the price, which is absolutely not the right way to do competitions. But but in another way, the younger generations must be given the option to be able to practice and to be able to contribute, because the ideas do change from the time that I was doing my designing stage to now. There is a move in terms of design, in terms of creativity, and I was quite lucky during my times to be able to be given a chance as a very young architect to do some projects. So I think that in a way, in our office also, whenever we have a job that we think might not need our kind of like level of expertise, we always in a way recommend like the client to actually go for a younger architects or a new company to explore their ideas, because basically at the end of the day, it will be able to it's nice to be able to give a chance to the new practitioners as much as I was given a chance before when I first started. So competition is always a good thing, but it'll be interesting to see how developers basically taking that one up. Yeah.
I have met some friends in Vietnam. They are working with an architect. Basically, the architecture practice is from Malaysia. They go there to service Gamuda and other Malaysian developers there. So, but when without any support from financial or developer, what do you think is our Malaysian design brand? I mean, if you think about German design, or you will think about precision and able to conduce complexity, or Japan efficiency, or even Singapore high tech maybe in their mind, or Scandinavian design, which is clean lines, clean form. Do you think Malaysian should develop a certain, because we are for the lack of better, we are very diverse. It could be used as our strength, but do you think we should have a design language or character that when you subscribe to a Malaysian architect, you will get this quality, that quality, that quality? Is that something that you have in mind? Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting question also, because basically when we go into different countries in Southeast Asia, we were always branded, Malaysians are always branded second behind Singapore, but we are somehow slightly better than Thai. So for funny reasons. So whenever we go to places like Cambodia or Myanmar, so the first thing they look at me and they will say, Singaporean. No, Malaysian. Okay. So is that perception is already there in terms of how people look at you. But then again, from my experience, the Singaporeans do come in with a lot of support. So basically, they're not only coming alone, but most of the time they will be coming with the support from the government, and these are very specific companies that goes into these countries. For Malaysians, I know that a lot of Malaysians working in China, because in places like Beijing, for example, because there is certain flair that Malaysian has that is very charming to the Chinese market. So a lot of Malaysians go to Beijing, and also I think Shanghai, if I'm not mistaken, purely because of the strength of ideas that is basically different from what you can get actually from mainland China. So in terms of diversity, I think I'm looking at it more in terms of the strength of Malaysians. So because we are a very mixed in terms of population with very different set of ideas coming from wherever we studied. We did our architectural studies. So I think it can be embraced in totality in terms of variety. And for example, when we go into Myanmar also, a lot of the kind of like very modern design is not able to be achieved because they don't have the technical know-how, but they have a lot of teak, they have a lot of timber, a lot of stone and various products that require very different skill sets. So maybe the one that involved in this kind of thing can actually excel in places like that, yeah.
All right. It seems like there is no questions from the participant. I think they were digesting the content of Datuk Saiful's talk. All right. Thank you so much, Datuk Architect Haji Saiful Anuar. Thank you for listening in, and please enjoy the rest of CPD Unlimited offering today. See you again next time, hopefully. Take care. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Last question, Datuk, from Tan Sri.
Tan Sri.
Yeah. Thank you, Datuk, for your presentation. I'd just like to get your experience with regard to, just so you mentioned about payment. It interests me about how you got paid. I think that was a prize money, right?
Yes, it is. It's a
So
prize money.
in other cases, how would you have been paid, in terms of your fees?
Mm,
Would you
okay.
would you have to get paid locally, or can the money be, you know, expatriated to Malaysia, or?
Okay, good question. Okay, for the first one, that's right. The Myanmar, the Cambodian project, there was the prize money. So that is a very straightforward one-off thing. For the Imri project, we were actually paid in Malaysian ringgit. So basically, it's done through a Malaysian contact. Everything is done through here. So so we get our payment directly from Malaysia. So the final one, the Myanmar project, we were initially paid in Malaysia because the client is basically based. He's based in Myanmar, Singapore, or Malaysia. So he spent a lot of time here. So we were working together quite a lot. So the initial payment is basically done in Malaysian ringgit. But once the project is actually moving, we will be looking into an offshore account being paid in US dollars.
Right.
So that will involve another set of issue in terms of taxation and repatriation of funds. That most probably will be doing it via Singapore, but that is yet to happen at the moment. But there is a real question because we were informed in some of the countries like Cambodia, it's very difficult to expatriate funds from the country, I think, yeah? So it's a real issue that when we were doing projects overseas, we have to be able to bring it back in one form of another or another without having double taxation or other hindrances. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is something that one has to learn when they want to venture abroad.
Yes.
Various countries has different administrative system as far as payment of and expatriation of money is concerned. The
True.
other
True.
one I'd like
True.
to get your view is that, what about collaborating with local counterparts, architects, or, in those countries that you've been?
Okay, in Cambodia, we have not got to that stage because basically we did not get the commission. But we were basically, what happened at that time was we were getting in touch because there were fellow I would say fellow participants in the competition, and quite a fair bit of it are local architects. We were already in a way of negotiating with the local architects in case of us being able to work together. So basically, I saw that in terms of collaboration, there are many ways that can be done. In one of the scenario, reversing backwards, we were approached by a developer from Europe. So basically, their architects are only up to the schematic design stage, where we will then take over. So those are the options that we are also looking overseas without us having to put our kind of like a base in those countries.
Right.
But I think in Myanmar, it will probably be more in terms of having us physically over there downstream, because the kind of thing that are required from us is beyond, in a way, normal architectural practice requirements, where we were required to, we were asked to in a way do more than just typical architectural interior works, main supervision, but we are in a way asked to be able to control in terms of looking at deliverables, in terms of what other things can be done. Yeah.
Okay. One last question I want to ask you about your experience in Cambodia when you came second, and the first one was you went to Singapore,
Yes.
and you mentioned that they came in with a package, a complete
Yes.
package of design, presumably it'll be construction and also financing.
Financing. Yes.
What would your advice for Malaysians to go abroad? Because this seems to be quite a common, what you call, obstacle, which I have also experienced that in India.
Yes. Yes.
Other
Yeah.
countries. So, what is your advice on this?
I think that's on this matter. I would think yes, because looking at the Singapore model, going into countries like this, they are having a much bigger backup, i.e., the government is basically behind them, and I am not too sure how many of those companies going out, but basically in my experience now when looking at it again, it will be a very good idea to actually come with a bigger in a bigger group. For example, architects, engineers, and even competent contractors and funding. And because basically in a lot of these countries that we are going to, and I assume most of the countries that we're going to are basically countries slightly less developed in a way in comparison to Malaysia. They'll be looking at a lot of things coming from people that is coming in. So, for example, I share the same thing with you, Tan Sri. We were in India once, and they are not particularly interested in the architecture portion. They're more interested in system formwork, funding, and everything else that we can package together in order to do the projects there. So I completely agree with you that I think moving forward in depending on projects, there are master plannings, there are single entity building. So whenever we're going for a bigger project, it will be a great idea to come in with a stronger force, for example, because we can rest assured there would be other people coming in with similar strength, for example. So yes, I'm all for us picking up our the package, the total package has to be there when we go in. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tan Sri.
Thank you both, Tan Sri and Datuk. I think we are at the end of our session. Again, participant, please fill up the poll and please enjoy the rest of CPD Unlimited offering today. Thank you and see you again next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And